Act 2 opens on a cold January morning in the West Ham shelter of the Salvation Army. Two diners are seen having lunch. One was young Snobby Price, who was a painter, but he said that he had left his job as a painter because he was not paid well. And the other person was a 45-year-old woman, Rummy Mitchens. Okay, these two were having a deep conversation as they had lunch, and based on their conversation, they both revealed the reality of their faked conversions. They had converted into the Salvation Army just to take advantage of the shelter. Price himself tells of his blasphemy, his gambling, and beating his mother to win the Salvation Army's favor. They both tried to gain sympathy from the Salvation Army shelter by living a fake life. And later, Peter Shirley, a worn out elderly man, was brought in by a young volunteer, Jenny Hill. She gave him lunch on his arrival, and Peter Shirley weeps with shame seeing the free lunch being served to him. But Jenny Hill comforts him by saying that he will be able to pay them back someday. Now, why did Peter Shirley come to the shelter? He had come to the shelter because he had lost his job to a younger man. His employer told him that he was too old to work, so he had been recently replaced. This is why he had come to the shelter, because he was unemployed. Suddenly, as these three were having lunch, Bill Walker, a very rough young man, arrived at the shelter. He had come there to look for his girlfriend, Mock, who was converted at the Salvation Army. He blames Jenny Hill for taking Mock away from him, so he slaps her on the face. Seeing what was going on, Rummy Mitchens came to help Jenny, but Bill Walker pushed her away. Now, due to all this commotion that was happening, Major Barbara was called immediately. Meanwhile, Peter Shirley confronts Bill, asking what kind of man terrorizes women. But Bill paid no attention to him. Now Barbara enters hurriedly and asks for the information of Peter Shirley. After she got necessary information, she turns to talk to Bill Walker. Bill Walker was stubborn, but Barbara handles him professionally. Very soon, Barbara was informed that her father has come to visit her. Remember in Act 1, Andrew Undershaft had promised to visit the Salvation Army shelter if Barbara would pay a visit to his factory. He did keep his promise, so he came to the shelter to see what work was going on there. Barbara introduces her father to Peter Shirley as a secularist. Hearing this, he corrects her by saying that being a millionaire is his religion. Shirley tells him that he is proud that he is not a millionaire. Hearing this, Undershaft said that poverty is nothing to be proud of. Since there was a heated conversation between Andrew Undershaft and Peter Shirley, Barbara requested Adolphus to show her father around the shelter. As Adolphus takes him around, they discussed their religious beliefs. Undershaft tells Adolphus that there are two things we must have to attain salvation: money and gunpowder. To this, Adolphus asks him if there is any place in his religion for honor, justice, truth, love, mercy, and so forth. Then Undershaft replies immediately and said, yes, they are the graces and luxuries of a rich, strong, and safe life. Adolphus tells Undershaft that Barbara will disagree of what he believes. Undershaft very well knew how strong Barbara was in her faith and that she was not an ordinary person. But he said he will try to convert her to his point of view, which is money and gunpowder, which will in turn offer freedom and power. Adolphus continues to tell Undershaft about Barbara's commitment in helping the poor. To this, Undershaft says that there is nothing great about poverty. Okay, he did not believe in being poor. For Undershaft, a love for poverty has no romance in it because once upon a time, as a child, okay, he grew up as a poor boy and he knows very well that there is nothing great about being poor. So he did not believe in being poor. He did not believe in trying to help the poor. Undershaft said that his daughter Barbara must belong to him, not the Salvation Army. Now, when Adolphus points out that Barbara cannot be bought, Undershaft agrees to it, but then said that Salvation Army can be bought because all religious organizations like hospitals, schools, and churches exist by selling themselves to the rich. The rich sponsors them. So Undershaft said that if he can buy the Salvation Army, Barbara will be a part of it. He also tells how he will prove to her that instead of her working for the poor, it would be much better if she were to work for the honest, happy workers at the factory. Mr. Undershaft believes that anyone who supports a system of government that takes care of the poor has to take the responsibility for the poverty. In his mindset, he is clear that if you take care of the poor, poverty will keep increasing. Okay, poverty will never end. So instead of taking care of the poor, feeding the poor, it is better to help the poor get their job and live a normal life. In the later part of this act, we come to know that Mrs. Baines, a Salvation Army commissioner, arrives and meets Undershaft. She happily describes the work of the Salvation Army and also mentions that a man named Bodger, England's chief manufacturer of gin, beer, and whiskey, will give the army £5,000. Okay, she will be getting a donation from the manufacturer of whiskey and beer. She tells Mr. Undershaft that they are hoping to find another donor to match this contribution. So this man, Mr. Bodger, had contributed to the Salvation Army how much? £5,000. But they still need some more. They still need another £5,000. So hearing this, Mr. Undershaft immediately writes a check and handed it over to Mrs. Baines. Seeing this, Barbara was shocked. She was not at all happy. Barbara tries to get Mrs. Baines to think about it carefully. Because why? Both the source from which the donation was coming was unacceptable to Barbara. One was from the manufacturer of whiskey and beer, okay, the root cause of poverty, and the other was from the manufacturer of weapons and artilleries, the root cause of war. So she did not accept the fact that they were getting donations or help from these two sources. So Barbara was not happy. After the check was signed and handed over to Mrs. Baines, there was joy in the shelter. Everyone was happy. There was cheer and music in the Salvation Army shelter, except for Barbara. She announces that she cannot join them any longer. So she removes her silver Salvation Army badge and pins the badge on her father's coat. This is how this act comes to an end.